burning up our flag, playing shitty country music. They forgot about the hag. Well, don't you think it's time we all got downright mad? Let's take our country back. Well, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And that's just what'll happen if you rob me to get a fix. No, I ain't messing around. I got no problem putting shitheads down. Let's take our country back.
Thank you to Farmer Joe's Fresh Market for sponsoring this broadcast. Located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida, Farmer Joe's is dedicated to providing the freshest selection of fruits, vegetables, meat, and seafood the area has to offer. Everything you need and more, Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's. Businessman, political analyst, multimedia commentator, attorney, Mr. Ford O'Connell. You can find Ford at FordO'Connell.com. He joins us as we try to make sense out of this insanity. Welcome to Cracker Culture. I'm Smoking Joe. Ford, I want to ask you, as an attorney, would you ever call the clerk of court and impersonate opposing counsel?
No, because I would be censured by the judge and probably lose my law license. But that appears to be exactly what a confidant of Hunter Biden's legal team attempted to do on Tuesday.
Well, it seems his legal counsel is shady as he is. I want you to watch this clip where it seems a bad day to be a Biden. That's all I can say.
President Joe Biden's son is set to appear in court tomorrow, where Delaware Judge Mary Ellen Noreika will decide on whether or not to sign off on Hunter's plea deal. And Hunter Biden may have just jinxed the deal. You're not going to believe what he just did. Republican Congressman Jason Smith just filed a brief with the judge, entering into evidence the IRS whistleblower testimony. Basically a legal move to get the judge to think, you know what, are you really going to let this guy off so easy? And Hunter Biden's attorney called the courthouse clerk today and pretended to be a Republican attorney and told the clerk, oops, you know what, we didn't really mean to file all that whistleblower stuff. Can you guys just strike that from the record? Seriously, Hunter Biden's lawyer made a phony phone call to the court and tried to remove the whistleblower testimony. He called and impersonated the opposing lawyer. Hey, this is a Republican attorney Chris Clark. Oh, never mind that amicus brief. Just forget about it. That was an accident. Good day, young lady. Was this Hunter's Sugar Brothers idea? You know, the one who was ripping bong hits off his balcony in Malibu? This sounds like the kind of caper you cook up when you're on cocaine. Hey, guys, you know what we should do? We should just call the courthouse and pretend we're the other lawyer. Democrats just called this whole investigation a clown show, and Hunter Biden's lawyers are making prank calls to the judge on the eve of the plea deal. You can get disbarred for that. This is so brazen, either Hunter thinks he can get away with anything, or his legal team is panicked that this judge is actually going to toss the plea and Hunter may have to serve time. And the judge, a Democrat, was furious that Hunter's lawyer tried to pull one over on her clerk. And the judge is now ordering Hunter's attorneys to explain themselves by 9 o'clock tonight or be sanctioned. But this wasn't the worst news for the Bidens today. Impeachment is officially on the table. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's come out and said it's go time.
You've got an informant claiming that the Biden family had been bribed. Should you ignore that or should you investigate that? The only way you can investigate that is through an impeachment inquiry, so the committee would have the power to get all the documents that they would need.
All right, so right there now, like, there's been breaking news within the last 35, 40 minutes that says that Hunter's plea deal did fall apart today in court. I think they recessed, and we'll know what's to come of that. But, you know, that was just crazy. Now, I know that we brought up Joe Biden's impeachment. I want to discuss that as well. But just think about that. Hunter walked in there today, thought this was all going to be behind him this afternoon, and he messed up.
Yeah, this is an ongoing event, Joe, but you're absolutely right. This is a seismic moment. Hunter Biden thought he was going to walk into court, sort of pro forma, do a plea deal, and all of a sudden that's falling apart. And the reason why it's falling apart, as I understand it, is because of one simple question. And the question came from the judge about, if you sign this plea deal, is there an ongoing investigation? The prosecution said, yes, we're continuing to investigate Hunter Biden. Well, then the judge says, wait a minute, if you're continuing to investigate Hunter Biden, why are we signing a plea deal right now? Because that doesn't seem right.
Well, and Hunter, that was one of the things that Hunter said in court today. He thought it was one thing and he didn't understand what was going on at that time, which would be even more reason for the judge not to accept the plea deal when the defendant claims he didn't understand he was going to be sentenced to. But on top of that, the thing that strikes me is when Hunter walked in there, he thought he was going to walk out there. Now, if he was to got that plea deal, does double jeopardy not apply here?
Well, that's a great question. I think the biggest concern right now is that we don't know whether or not there's going to be a plea deal. Apparently, they're trying to write a new plea deal. But if not, this goes to trial. The concern here is, look, this plea deal concerned 2 tax evasion charges, a gun charge as well. And what we understand is you could have charged him with up to six felonies and 5 misdemeanors. The problem here is the statute of limitations. The longer you drag your feet on whether or not you take him to trial or whether or not you have a plea deal, the issue is going to be there won't be any crimes left to charge him with.
Well, and I know that the tax thing is serious, but, me as a conservative, I only think taxes are serious to conservatives because if you look across the board at Democrats, you have a lot of Democrats that have had taxes. Look, when's the last time Al Sharpton paid taxes? I mean, I'm just saying, they never get punished.
You're absolutely right. And we're talking about more than $17 million failing to report that to the IRS. Look, here's the problem. Here's what Hunter Biden tried to do. Here's the truly sick thing. They're trying to slide by this plea deal, block the House oversight, extra evidence, because what they're trying to do is immunize Hunter from future charges. This is the unbelievable corruption of it. It wasn't just about, boy, you got a sweetheart plea deal. You got a sweetheart plea deal. And by the way, if anything in the future comes up, you have immunity against that as well. And at that point, the judge said, well, hold the phone.
Well, and, I have to bring this up. You hear all about privilege, white privilege, and the Democrats, you are showing what you are screaming right now. If I've ever seen privilege, that's exactly what we're seeing in the Hunter Biden case. Now, that being said, here's another thing to me that people might not look at the same way I do. When that judge addressed Hunter Biden in her correspondence, she addressed him as the president's son. Now, when somebody don't address you by your formal name or say, well, that's the boss's kid, that's automatically putting a cushion, in my opinion, in for what's to come.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem here, Joe, and that is the perceived political interference, but also the preferential treatment. This is what we're talking about, is 2-tier system of justice. That shouldn't have occurred that way. This is Hunter Biden, the individual, and it doesn't matter if he's the president's son. But I think what the problem here is not only the judge's correspondence, but you also have the political media that treats the Bidens like they're an unquestioned king, and everything the Republicans are talking about is some sort of obsession or fantasy, and this is actual proof. This is a terrible day, even if they eventually get a plea deal through, because it's making the case that Republicans have been saying for all along. There's a lot more here. And remember, when we talk about Hunter Biden, this isn't about some crack-addicted person with several baby mamas that he refuses to pay alimony to. The Hunter Biden saga is and always has been a Joe Biden ordeal.
Well, look, these people in the trailer park ain't as trashy as the Bidens. I mean, that's just a given. Well, we've seen hours here this week of testimony from FBI whistleblowers, which seem they leave little question as to the corruption of the Biden family. And the IRS and the DOJ, they all protected them, kept them out of punishment. For Lord, are we going to get anything out of this other than the left just demeaning these whistleblowers? And these whistleblowers, if I'm not mistaken, are Democrats.
Yeah, you're talking about Gary Shapley, who was a supervisory special agent with the IRS, and I believe Joseph Ziegler, who was also a criminal investigator with the IRS. These are two people that have come forward and basically said, you hear all this smoke that Republicans are talking about. There's actually fire here because we have firsthand knowledge of the fact that not only was there political interference, not only did Hunter Biden get preferential treatment, but we weren't allowed to ask questions about Joe Biden's involvement here. Look, I think what the whistleblowers have been saying over the last couple of weeks is absolutely explosive. And my problem is very simple. And it goes back to the media, and it goes back to the idea of pushing this all underneath the rug because the Republicans are lunatic. It is now time to impeach the Attorney General of the United States, because we have to know what he knows to determine what kind of preferential treatment. You can't go right after Joe Biden. You got to go after the Attorney General.
Well, now, with that impeachment that we've heard is imminent with Biden now, I mean, does that give the Attorney General a pass because we are going straight for Biden?
Well, I don't think you should go straight for Biden. I think you need to tell a story that the media refuses to tell, and that is you start off with it, like Jim Jordan suggests, the Attorney General Merrick Garland, so you can nail down more facts and more documents, and then depending on how that pans out, then you need to go to what Kevin McCarthy's talking about, which is an impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden. I mean, the Bidens are crooked as can be, and the fact of the matter is everyone in Washington's turning their head away from what appears to be a really, really huge story, much bigger than anything the Democrats like say Watergate. This is far bigger than Watergate. This is taking foreign bribes from America's enemies.
The whole thing is beyond my conception that we see this is in testimony. Everybody can see it. And when you watch these testimonies, you got people on the left are discrediting these guys, and they can't scream that they're homophobic. The one guy claimed he was gay, and then they're both Democrat. So now that your own people are coming out and saying, look, we can't hide this no more. Here it is. It's just like a pie in your face.
The Democrats are in damage control mode. They are going to run over and throw anyone under the bus as they can, because this is all about power. They're not into telling the truth. They're not into what's doing best for the country. They're not into whether or not this harms the institution of the presidency. They are about holding the Oval Office, and they will run over and destroy anyone's lives who get in the way of that. And this needs to be a real lesson for Republicans, because sometimes Republicans don't want to fight. Well, now you've got a real fight, you've got real evidence, and now is the time not to back down.
Well, and again, like I said, it seems like chipping away, the Democrats are starting to see that they can't keep up this lie. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's a lifelong Democrat. He can't believe his own party made efforts to censor him. And I've got a little clip of what Robert had to say about that.
This is a letter that many of you signed. Many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. The charges in this, and by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party. It was appalling to my father, to my uncle, to FDR, to Harry Truman, to Thomas Jefferson, as the chairman referred to. It is the basis for democracy. It sets us apart from all of the previous forms of government. We need to be able to talk, and the First Amendment was not written for easy speech. It was written for the speech that nobody likes you for.
There you go. He said it. It ain't meant for easy speech. It's meant for the speech nobody likes you for.
Well, that's the whole point. And I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a throwback. What happened to Democrats who wanted to protect free speech? What happened to Democrats who were skeptical of government control? And for the love of me, what happened to Democrats who were critical of the military-industrial complex? I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is showing what a cult today's Democratic Party has become, because here is someone who is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. He walks into, in the House of Representatives, a hearing on censorship, and the first thing that happens is Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida calls to censor him in a vote.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing. He was at a censorship hearing getting censored, and he was as thrown by it as anybody. He couldn't believe they tried to pull that in that meeting. But, you know, I don't put nothing past them, but at least there's a few of the Democrats that have seen that there's too much evidence for them to keep denying it. They can't keep going forward because all they do is look more and more like idiots, and they look more and more untrustworthy. And there's nobody going to want to vote for somebody that is a stupid liar.
Well, not only that,
they voted for Biden. Oops.
You're absolutely right, but let's look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just for a second, a little bit more closely, because he's someone who's one of their own, and they're trying to throw him under the bus. What do they do in second they couldn't get that vote to censor him during the hearing? They start calling him that he's anti-Semitic, Asian hate. I mean, they will keep going until, as long as they can continue to perpetuate the lie. And remember, the media turned on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And what was his source of information for the so-called controversy he was engaged in? The Cleveland Clinic, which is considered in America one of the top medical thought leaders in this entire country. And if the Cleveland Clinic is saying, hey, COVID sort of affects people differently, and Robert F. Kennedy says it out loud, they want to crush him. And what I couldn't believe is that some conservative media joined in as well.
Yeah, well, I think that some conservative media should be not really considered conservative. I think they're more opportunists, like some of our establishment conservatives here in Florida. So now I wanted to bring up the fact that the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who has not done much of significance, she come out, she had to prove that she's just as ignorant as Joe Biden, and I'm going to play a small clip from her.
Speaking of our children, extremists pass book bans to prevent them from learning our true history. Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
Now look, this chick ain't even really African. I mean, come on, and her family did own slaves.
Okay, let's step back for a second. When the Biden administration's no longer in the White House, Kamala Harris is going to be the textbook definition of politically stupid. She is the worst vice president in American history, and she's trying to make herself relevant all the time. And what is she doing right now? She's attacking Florida's new social studies curriculum. She's taking one line from a 215-page social studies prospectus and somehow trying to claim in a jarring way about slaves and benefits. It is absolutely reprehensible, and it's a completely made-up controversy.
Well, and look, I have researched a lot of this new social studies program. I know a lot of the teams that are working on it, and nothing she says is true. She says they're gaslighting people, but she's the one doing the gaslighting here.
That's exactly right. Let's remember, when it comes to look, African-American history is very complex, as is American history. And African-American history is American history. And Florida is trying to present a more full picture. The Democrats don't want people to learn history. All they want people to know about is the victim and the oppressor narrative. And anything that strays from that victim and oppressor narrative, they don't want to hear about. It's the Democrats who want to rewrite history. And the reason why they want to rewrite history is because that's how they derive their political power, by keeping people stupid and misinformed.
Well, again, it's a shame that other nations see our leadership as dumbed down as it is currently. It's embarrassing to me. And like I said, I've got friends and a lot of friends overseas that, you know, when they call me and they want to talk politics, I don't even want to talk politics because trying to explain this to people that don't live here, it's like a comedy show.
Well, not only that, I will say this: the international media is even worse than the American media when it comes to talking about the United States. And that's why they always have a very jaded view of it. Believe it or not, a long time ago, I was a BBC radio contributor. And frankly, I couldn't believe the calls I'd be fielding about the Second Amendment and everything else. The international media doesn't like to see it when America succeeds. But I think one of the biggest lies, and look, there's no question that slavery is the greatest sin that America engaged in. At the same time, though, if you listen to Democrats will make you think that only America is the only country in North America is the only continent in the world that ever engaged in slavery. I'm not trying to make it better, but what I'm trying to tell you is this occurred in South America, this occurred in Africa, this occurred in Asia, this occurred in Europe. But yet somehow we are talking about it in America, and not only when we talk about it, the Democrats want to lie about it because that way they can continue the entire victim oppressor narrative. And it's all about politics. It's not about informing people or fixing the past.
Well, there was a guy put out a video the other week. He was a black man, and he's running for office in North Carolina. He's actually running for governor of North Carolina, and his name slips me right now. But he stepped up and he said, "I'm not an African American." He said, "I'm a black American." He said, "That's the problem." He said, "I'm American. I'm nothing more than American." And he said, "Everybody keeps trying to divide everybody because saying we're putting something in front of us. If you were born here, you're raised here, you need to love it here and quit trying to do all this division because nobody I know of currently today owns a slave or owned a slave."
Well, Joe, you're absolutely right. You're talking about the lieutenant governor right now of North Carolina, and he makes a very good point. And he's making this obviously because he is a black American, just to explain that sort of hyphenation. But people do it all the time. I'm Irish American, I'm Jewish American, whatever it may be. No, you're an American of X. And that's the whole point. They want to divide it because the greatest enemy, I always tell you, outside the United States, it's the Chinese Communist Party. Inside the United States, it's the enemy from within that is trying to divide us on every little thing. And if you listen to the media long enough, they'll tell you that it's the Republicans that are the cult without actually ever letting you know that some of the stuff that Democrats are pushing is absolutely insane. I mean, somehow, remember, you and I are in a cult because somehow we don't believe that men can have babies. But the Democrats say that, and we're the bad guy. Just remember that.
Well, you know, and you say that there was a time when you would see some man, big burly man dressed up as a woman, and you knew it was a gag. Nowadays, you see a man dressed up like a burly woman. It's probably not a gag. It's their lifestyle, and it's sickening, man. I'm telling you. And this mostly it is the left only, and this narrative of stupidity. Same way with Kamala Harris. They run this stupidity, and people in other countries, because our leadership is that ignorant, that's the way we all look. We got to be more ignorant than our leaders because we elected them.
You know, you make a lot of great points. Don't forget, though, that they also want to criminalize you if you use the wrong pronoun when you're talking to people. I mean, everyone goes, okay, well, this stuff will eventually end. No, it isn't. The Democrats just look for a new way every single day to divide us. And then the corporate media sometimes gives them ways to divide us that the Democrats haven't even thought of. It is unbelievable. And it is destroying our constitutional republic. And unfortunately, most people, they got kids in school. They don't want to be bothered with the schools, you know, in terms of causing a scene or fighting back. And I'm telling you, if we don't fight back, this country may disappear before you and I even die, Joe.
Well, and the thing is that they're trying to force the older generations to accept these ideologies and things like the vice president and the president are saying the DEI and all that. I got two little girls. So, of course, the new movie out right now that everybody's taking their kids to is Barbie. And I'm sure my girls would like to go, but they're not going. The very start of the Barbie is the Barbies are to eliminate men because they don't need them. They have transgender characters in the new Barbie. So if it's Bulldyke Barbie, it ain't going to happen for my girls. I'm sorry.
Well, remember, this goes beyond even Barbie in terms of redefining people's roles and everything else. You got a remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and you don't even have dwarfs. Not only that, you don't have Prince Charming. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Between the media and the Democrats, they'll make you believe your right hand is your left hand before you can even blink. It is absolutely insane. But again, people like me and you who bring this up, somehow we're the bad guys and we're engaging in culture wars. And I think you're absolutely right. Look, just 10 years ago when it came to some of these things like the transgender community, the gay community, it was about acknowledgement. Now it's about acceptance. And I can tell you something. If you have bad body odor, I acknowledge it. Doesn't mean I'm accepting it.
As many people outside of Florida are not familiar with Ron DeSantis, just like many Floridians are not familiar with Vivek Ramaswamy. Polls showed that Vivek and DeSantis have become even in polls not once but twice. Trump support has remained stable, and polls show him to have a commanding lead over the GOP candidates and moving ahead of Joe Biden. Ford, does Vivek Ramaswamy have a chance?
No, I don't think he does have a chance, and I think he's going to have less of a chance when people find out how much he supported masks and the, how shall I say, the COVID shot. I think that's going to, push some people the wrong way. It doesn't mean that Vivek Ramaswamy isn't pushing some great ideas. I think he's a great thought leader. I think he's a great spokesman. I think that he could be in the cabinet for somebody who, the eventual Republican nominee should they win the White House. I think he has a bright future in politics. Is he going to be our president anytime soon? Absolutely not. But it points to a bigger problem, okay? Ron DeSantis' campaign is officially launched for what now? 2 months. And we expected in 2 months that he'd be on the heels of Donald Trump. If anything, that's not the case. What he's doing now is he's looking over his shoulder because it isn't the consensus that he's going to be the second place person who's going to take on Donald Trump. Now we're talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. We're talking about Tim Scott of South Carolina. The donors are fleeing DeSantis, and I don't know in the last 2 weeks what number reboot we're on. But if he doesn't, go ahead.
I got a little clip of Vivek here. I wanted to play on from correspondence. See what you think.
2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has tied Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for second place in the GOP presidential race. A new Kaplan Strategies survey shows DeSantis and Ramaswamy both tied at 12% each, far behind former President Donald Trump, who has taken the top spot at 48%. No other candidate is above single digits, with former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and former Vice President Mike Pence both at 5%, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley with 3%, and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson at 1%, according to the survey.
Kaplan predicts the GOP race is likely coming down to 3 candidates, including Trump, DeSantis, or Ramaswamy. Former President Donald Trump has forecasted that DeSantis might not be in second place for much longer, and Ramaswamy could fill that spot in his place. According to Florida Politics, the Kaplan survey could be an outlier, as the race to the White House polling average still shows Trump at 52%, DeSantis at 20%, Pence at 6%, and Ramaswamy at 5%. So, Jessica, Vivek Ramaswamy has run a rather unconventional campaign for Republican. He's appeared on The Breakfast Club. He first announced his candidacy on the now canceled Tucker Carlson Tonight program on Fox News. He has basically been able to manage his own news cycle, whereas a lot of the other candidates have fallen into the trap of just responding and reacting to whatever Trump does. It seems like he has managed to avoid that trap entirely. Now, that might be partially because Trump hasn't attacked him yet, but at the same time, he seems like he has a good understanding of how the media cycle works, how to get his ideas out there on social media. His Twitter account, which I believe he runs entirely by himself, is doing incredibly well. And this is clearly reflecting in the polls.
He also has run an interesting campaign when it comes to finances. He's kind of the Mary Kay of presidential candidates, with his offering of 10% commission on anyone who donates based off of your referral link. He's literally turned his fundraising into an MLM. And the way he's framed this is fascinating as well. You have all of these bundlers who get together a bunch of large donations and take up to 10%, a large cut of the money they fundraise for candidates. And he's saying, well, why don't we democratize this? Why doesn't the everyday donor get a cut of the people they refer to the campaign? And so I don't know how much of the buzz around Ramaswamy is because he's the Mary Kay of presidential candidates and because this referral program turning into something entrepreneurial for people who support his campaign is something that's grown his base. I think it's a really fascinating approach. I don't know if it's one that will work or one that we should even support, but it definitely is interesting and unconventional, but I think just furthers how far we go in to the political industrial complex in the US when it comes to elections.
Yeah, I wanted to play that clip before we got too far in there because that was something that really, he made a comment that he wasn't a super PAC puppet. He even claims that if he was the GOP nominee, the Democrats would not run Biden against him because they know they couldn't beat him.
Well, let me say this. First of all, I tip my hat off to him for trying to cut the consultants out that have been just scamming a lot of these candidates, and he's trying something new by democratizing it. We call that bundling, and he's saying if you bundle, you get money. That's good. Opening it up, I think that's absolutely great. But I think the key was made by the host, Amber Ethy, who I actually know pretty well, who basically said Trump's not attacking him. There's a reason why Trump's not attacking him, because he's not going to win. And Trump knows that as well. And also, Vivek is out there doing something very different. He's pushing ideas. He's doing things in an unorthodox manner. I look at more like beta testing, if you will, for a future time and place. And remember, he's a very, very successful individual, and he used to be on Fox Business a lot. He's got a lot to offer the conversation. But the question is simple. Will he be the nominee? Absolutely not.
Well, now, when we talk about potential VPs, in my opinion, Vivek seems to be outshining anybody else as far as that position. I don't think Vivek's ready for the presidency, in my opinion. However, I could see Trump picking him. The only person that feels too good to be VP is Ron DeSantis. He's already said that he was more of an executive than a VP.
Well, as we've also discussed with Ron DeSantis, there's this whole issue about whether or not you can have two Floridians on the ticket at the exact same time. We've been through this before. There is some question about it. People say, well, there isn't. I'm like, there's some question. If that was the case, we would have done this before. I think he would be in the cabinet if Trump assumes the Oval Office. I don't think he'd be the VP. If anyone could potentially be the VP among the people who are running right now, it'd most likely be Tim Scott among the people running for president. Because remember, Tim Scott is rising in the polls. And trust me, Ron DeSantis and the rest of the field are trying to knock down Tim Scott because they see him as an actual threat to where their power is. And remember, it's not just that Vivek is tying Ron nationally. You go to a South Carolina only poll, which is the third primary state after Iowa and New Hampshire, and Ron DeSantis isn't in second place there either. Right. He's actually trailing Nikki Haley. So Ron DeSantis has got all sorts of problems. We talk about this being a two-person race. Right now, he hasn't shut off the rest of the field. It's Trump and then everybody else, not a two-person race.
Well, and again, and the problem that Ron's got is he's offended a lot of his constituents who voted for him for governor by basically abandoning us and going on this campaign trail. I mean, most of us conservatives in Florida, now you got the never Trumpers in the establishment, but most of us conservatives in Florida, we wanted Ron to be our governor. I still want Ron to stay there as governor. I want him to get his ass back in Tallahassee and do the job we voted him to do, not out here in a losing battle. He's not going to win. And all these people out here that's beating the drums that he's going to win, I just don't see him having a chance unless Trump drops dead. Lord, don't let that happen. But I don't see him having a chance.
Trump drops dead or Biden hauls him away and throws him in Gitmo. I mean, those are the two possibilities there. And I think you're absolutely right. Look, Ron DeSantis is, at least in the modern era, if not of all time, the greatest governor Florida's ever had. And we have a huge insurance problem. And I think when you look at polling in our state, there's a reason why Donald Trump is beating Ron DeSantis by 20, 30 points in Florida, because people want Ron to be our governor. When 2028 comes around or whatever, so be it. But we're also at a critical juncture in Florida, particularly when it comes to property insurance. And if we don't get this fixed, we're going to be in real trouble. We're no longer going to be the envy of the nation. So I think Ron DeSantis has also learned that outside of Florida, people don't know who the heck he is. And frankly, he doesn't have a message. He reminds me, if you watch him, like in Iowa, he reminds me of the old saying, like the Texans. Well, back in Texas, we did it this way. He walks into Iowa and goes, in Florida, I did this, this, and this. And I love it. The problem is, if I'm from Iowa, what the hell does that mean to me? How are you going to make my life better? And I think that that's his message. And look, he's fired, what, a third of his staff? I think his campaign is way too online. And if he wants to get back in this, he's going to tell people around the country how he's going to make their life better. If not, there is no way he's ever going to have any shot at contention.
Well, you brought up a very good point, and it's something I think that anybody that's a candidate for any office, because I noticed in working with local candidates back during the last election we participated in, a lot of candidates have the issue of regurgitating their past. And I think that you do need to let people know what you've accomplished, but you need to get away from that and go to what your future accomplishment and goals are. And a lot of candidates just can't get off of what they've already done and move forward.
Well, I think that that's because they're following the Terry Miller playbook and they're all singing from the same hymn book. They're going to tell you what they're going to do. And the reason why they're not going to tell you what they're going to do in the future is because they're going to screw up Lee County.
Oh.
I mean, that's why they're not telling you what they want to do in the future. I mean, I listen to every single person tell me how we needed to incorporate Lehigh Acres. And I'm saying to myself, these people don't have two pennies to rub together, and you want to incorporate them and price them out of their home? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's really.
You got me fired up, Joe.
Yeah, well, everybody waits for this part of the show, and I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and start with the Fort Myers shenanigans. We've been discussing the violence in District 5 in the Lee County school system under the direction of armored persons. Matter of fact, me and you've been talking about it, I think, since February. While Armour called me vile and conveyed to former board members that he didn't respond to me or anyone affiliated with me and they should not listen to me, well, he might not deliver on his campaign promises, but Armour did ignore the evidence brought forward of a young girl being beaten. The story has went viral. Lee County School District can do nothing but damage control. We brought this to the public. We gave it to the mainstream media because we felt like it needed the traction. Armour has placed the blame squarely where the problem lies, the damn cell phones. And before we talk about it, I'm going to let Armour tell you about it in his own words.
To begin this evening's board meeting.
The district school board member for Lehigh Acres, Armour Persons, knows about the attack on Patricia. While he couldn't explain why she wasn't protected that day, he says school employees are going through new training this summer to identify and handle disruptive situations.
All the administrations learning how to make sure everything is reported, from bullying to everything else. If there needs to be more faculty put toward the issue or more training or whatever, then that's what we do. That's our job.
But that new training does not help with damage that's already been done. Patricia came home battered, and her family is heartbroken.
It was horrible. I mean, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know how to take the pain away. It is absolutely the worst thing I've ever had to go through.
Patricia left veterans after the January attack, but students at her new school had seen the viral video and began bullying her too.
They turned their backs on her, so she had no one.
Eventually, she left Florida to live with extended family in Missouri.
The Lee County school districts fail.
Patricia's attack is one of dozens of fights Wink News observed on social media in recent months, nearly all of them from schools located in Lehigh Acres. We even found several social media pages dedicated solely to posting fights. Persons has seen the fight videos and the pages. He wants to stop the problem at its source.
I personally think there should be no cell phones in school. It is a problem, and parents seem to be very reluctant to give up the cell phones. I think the cell phones should be taken when the kids arrive at school.
Now, if parents wasn't reluctant to give up their children's access to cell phones before, they need to be now. If I'm not mistaken, I seem to remember Armour campaigned a little bit about cameras in the classroom, but we never heard no more about that after he got elected. Without that child, whoever videotaped that, we would have never known the level of violence going on in that school, Ford.
Yeah, and this whole thing would be swept under the rug completely. Not that Armour isn't already trying to sweep it under the rug, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And let's give credit where credit's due. It was you who brought this video forward. It was you who decided that the mainstream media needs to hear about it because we're not going to take care of our own. And I think that that's what's scary. Armour's hope was, let's ban the cell phones. Without the cell phones, we would never know. And I think that that's the issue in and of itself. And let's also remember, Armour may be the school board chair, but he's also the person in charge of District 5. And not only do you have Fight Club in District 5, apparently, but you also only have, I believe, one school meeting Lee County's standards. So honestly, Armour Persons needs to do a better job in District 5, and unfortunately, he's too busy being school board head and not actually taking care of District 5.
Well, and here's the thing. When this first happened, I had spoke with the mother, Miss Kicker, and she literally was too upset to talk. And I spoke with the grandmother, Miss Madonna Lewis, and they told me to use the video however we wanted to. We went, before we ever put the video out, we went to the school board. We addressed this situation in meetings, action meetings. To the point, I did put a video out because the superintendent, who's been real good at trying to call our staff liars and has had to send us apologies when we prove we have the receipts or we don't put it out there. Now, I told the superintendent, I'm giving you a heads up. This is bigger than what you think. I said, it's going to the mainstream media. I'm giving you the. So superintendent said, don't believe everything you see on social media, basically saying that what I was saying was a lie. He said that at an action meeting to the public. I then put the video out. We got an infraction for putting it because it was so violent. YouTube hit us for it. Now, I then went back to them about it. They still done nothing until one of our staff sent it to Peter Fleischer and Wink News went and done something. That's a shame when your constituents, your advocates, and your parents are giving you everything you need to combat this with, and cell phones ain't the source of the problem. The source of the problem is our administration.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely, I totally agree with you. I think it's important that everyone knows that you try to go through every single channel before Wink News. And I think that's the story on top of the fact that you have Fight Club in District 5. And all he's saying is, well, we've got new training things trying to sweep it under the rug, and we should get rid of the cell phones. Well, we ain't getting rid of the cell phones in District 5 because this stuff continues to go on. But I also think that there's a bigger question. You've done all this. What about how many other kids basically have a complex in District 5 because they've been being beaten? What are you doing about them? And I think that that's the key point. In this case, this little girl went to another school. They found out about the video. I guess she's in Missouri now. But I mean, you can't be having kids leaving Lee County just because this is going on. I mean, honestly, that's a travesty. The job here, let's remember the job of the school board. It's not only to deliver a quality education in a timely manner, it's also to make sure the kids are safe. And clearly, the kids aren't safe.
Well, Armour Persons, Superintendent Christopher Bernier, and the rest of the district are trying their best to cover their ass on this one. But the truth is, just you put it out there, if it wasn't for the cell phones and how many beatings have happened that there wasn't no cell phones there, there's no cameras, you don't allow parents into the schools, you took the COVID thing to use that as an excuse to deny parents access to their children's classrooms. COVID's over. Now, you want to take away the phones? I'm good with that. Put cameras in all the classrooms. Put parents in the schools. Hell, me and my wife volunteered.
Look, I think you're right. I don't think the phone should have ever been in the classroom in the first place, but it's the only mechanism we have right now because they've tightened their control. They've abused COVID to ban parents. And you're right. If you don't have a window into what's going on outside of what we're told, then you're going to need some sort of mechanism. If they're not going to put cameras in the classroom or the hallways or having a monitor go and deal with it themselves, then this is a serious problem. And so, again, this apparent, I got a feeling that this is just only the tip of the iceberg, Joe. I got a feeling you got a lot more problems that they're covering up. And the fact is that this one just came out. And I think what was amazing about Wink is that they showed that there were other channels of Fight Club going on. So this is not just one little girl or one family trying to get the message out there. This is an epidemic. And I got a feeling it's not only in Lee County. Something tells me it's in our other 66 counties.
Well, if you want to see the actual video that YouTube did not allow, it is on Rumble. We put it out on Rumble on the Cracker Culture podcast. The truth is, everything in Wink comes from our video. That Wink, the everything you see in Wink video, Wink News, was stuff that we had already put out months ago and gave the district warning. Before we even put it out, we gave them warning. They decided to not listen to what we were telling them and act like they were going to sweep this under the rug like they do with all the malfeasance that goes on in the district. Now they can't because there was a cell phone. That's the only reason they can't sweep this under the rug. Now, that being said, this is to the parents out there. This next action meeting, which I believe is next Tuesday, you need to be at that school board because Armored Persons is already putting forth that we're going to eliminate cell phones from the classrooms. And if that does, it might be your child that's beat next time and you don't have no proof.
I think that's a great point, but I think what's even scarier is, so you brought this to their attention in February of 2023. We are now in the middle of July and Wink News just ran that. That's going through all the channels, all the proper things, bring in the receipts. Lee County's children don't have 5 to 6 months before essentially you can actually address a problem. And then when you do address a problem, it's a very real problem. They want to sweep it underneath the rug. I mean, this should scare people that it took 5 months basically to get to the point that we're at right now. And then they want to ban the only thing that is the reason why you know about this, which is cell phones, which again, I'm against cell phones, but that's not why Armored Persons wants to ban cell phones. He wants to ban cell phones because District 5 is a thorn in his side.
Look, anything other than the free meal and a photo op is a thorn in his side. I mean, let's just be realistic. He can't go to these troubled schools within his district, but I know today him and Bill Ribble and the superintendent are at a groundbreaking ceremony at another school. I mean, look, that's all well and good, but your district needs your full attention right now. Nobody else.
I mean, and that's my point is, not only is the person District 5 Armor, okay, but Armor's also the school board chair. So when is it going to get any better for District 5? This is supposed to be the person that can turn things around for District 5. And don't get me wrong, it's a bad situation in District 5, okay? You got a long way to go. It's going to take many years in District 5, particularly when you look at the testing scores. That said, he's still ignoring District 5. This is absolutely incredible. It's going to get no better for District 5. You've got the person in power, and they just don't care.
And if you think it's going to get any better when you look, realistically, out of all the board members, the most devious one on there is Chris Patrica. Now, you're going to replace her with Bill Ribble. He might not be as devious, but he's as incompetent on a school board as Armor Persons.
Yeah, I've always said this about Bill Ribble. I don't know what the qualifications are. I think, you need to get as many candidates in that race as possible. Let the people decide. Not a knock on Bill Ribble, but what it is he actually qualified? And unfortunately, once again, the establishment's telling you, taking away your vote, telling you only Bill Ribble can run and that you have to vote for Bill Ribble. I thought we lived in Lee County. I thought we lived in a constitutional republic. Instead, we live in Terry Miller's monarchy, and he's going to tell you who to vote for. This is absolutely insane. It ain't going to get any better in Lee County. Wake up.
Well, people don't look at it the way I look at it. I mean, my country farming butt ain't going to go out and decide to be a brain surgeon tomorrow. Same way, I don't want somebody like Bill Ribble coming out and decide to teach my future brain surgeons. You need people qualified to do the job, to put them in the right places so we get the maximum output from our children. We don't have that with Lee County School District right now. And the scores show it. The test scores show we're failing our children. Lee County School District is failing all of the citizens of Lee County currently.
Yeah, it is failing the citizens of Lee County. We see this year after year, and the test scores are only getting worse. And within Lee County, District 5 is terrible. Only one school in District 5 is at the Lee County median, which, by the way, is at the bottom half of the state. So all in all, there is nothing to write home about when it comes to Lee County schools. We're not sending our best and brightest to be on the school board to help right the ship. All we're doing is sending more corruption and more cronyism to sit on that school board, and all it's going to do is destroy the children of Lee County's future.
Well, I only hope that Lee County residents will wake up and see, with their children failing, not able to read and achieve math problems on a level of other children in other districts, their children being beat to a pulp. One day you'll wake up and see we've got the wrong leadership covering our children.
Well, that's the whole point. What is the job of the public school district? What's the job? It's very simple. Deliver a quality education in a timely manner and to make sure the kids are safe. Now, I agree there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of schools in Lee County. It can get away from you, that simple mission. But somehow that mission has been buried under because a whole bunch of people basically want to pay themselves and pay off their friends. And who's suffering? Lee County's kids.
Ford, that's something that we just got to wait and see if we can get somebody in there to change it. For our last story, and I'm going to say this, I was very reluctant to report on this. We had our local state representative, Lyle Spencer Roach, who alleged his home was shot the other day. Now, I'm going to say this. If somebody shot at anybody's home, that's an act of cowardice. A man owns his business. That's why anything I got to say, there ain't nothing I'll put out on this screen or nothing I'll have to say I won't say to their faces. Now, that being said, I question whether it's true that somebody, I think that Spencer Roach's home had a bullet fired into it. I totally believe that. But the question I got is, I have never had somebody shoot into my home, let alone have any of my buildings shot at or shot at twice in 18 months. And the thing that kicks me is it seems like something Terry Miller would think of, because it always, Spencer Roach got less than 18 months ago, his office got shot up. Well, we were in an election, wasn't we, Ford, right at that time?
Look, there's no question about it. I'm glad nobody was injured. Let's just say that. The facts are still coming out. Okay. it does seem like a major league coincidence that these happened 18 months apart. Now, I'm not alleging anything, but I know that you have to say to yourself, coincidence? That seems highly unlikely.
Well, I mean, the man would play the damn lottery. I mean, that many things happened to him. I mean, shit, I'd play every gambling game I could because the luck, you got better luck than anybody. Whether it's good or bad, you're going to get struck once in a while. But that being said, here's my question about this. If Spencer Roach actually had somebody shoot at him, that's wrong. I know that, and once you have something like this and you promote it the way Spencer Roach has been on every media outlet, and look at the reporters that have covered it from Politico, some of the same reporters that cover everything Terry Miller's people need. And that's the way it seems to be. This is so politicized, it's so publicized, it seems more like a tactic than a tragedy. And that bothers me.
I think, look, not to interrupt you, I think that's the point that we need to make clear. I'm glad no one was hurt, and if this is really what it is, the person who did that or individuals who did that need to be prosecuted the fullest extent of law. The problem here is the publicity and the promotion. And it seems to me that this isn't like, oh my gosh, state representative in Lee County was shot at. This seems to be like a promotional tour, like somehow you just won the Heisman Trophy, and now I'm going to have to go around to every single media outlet in Florida and talk about it.
And all these people, oh, poor Spencer. Oh, they're all after Spencer. They ain't nobody after Spencer. Shit, I probably mess with Spencer more than anybody, but I don't want no physical harm to him. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He is playing for the sympathies. Look at poor, and look, he's a little bitty guy, about 3'4". I mean, he's like a Care Bear or some old poor little Spencer. But here's something else, and I've had several people send me messages and ask me questions about what they seen in the video from Wink News. Here Spencer had a daycare room set up. I know Spencer's part of the Garden Ad Litem program, and me and you've talked about that. A lot of people like doing that for tax shelters or tax breaks. Am I wrong?
No, there's stories all over the nation about people that are abusing the Guardian program, the foster programs, to just be making money, and some kids, basically get lost even more through the chute of life. And I think, that's something that you see. Now, am I alleging that Spencer Roach doing that? Absolutely not.
And I ain't neither.
But people need to understand that, not many people who don't have children have what I would call cribs in their house.
He didn't have cribs. He's got changing tables, wipes that look half used. And, from the best part I figured out, he's been in Germany. He's been to Colombia for whatever reason for a day and other places. He hasn't even been in that home for close to a year because of hurricane and things like that. So, I mean, he's reported that he lost everything. He even had pictures of his furniture out there. But yet there's the baby furniture's in there and there's no kids.